Hi everybody, it's Mr. Boll here, and this is lesson 2 of our new topic, our year 3 geography topic on coasts. And today we're going to look at natural coastal features. Okay, now here's a very famous type of feature that you might have seen if you've ever been down to a place called Durdle Door, which is down on the coast, on the south coast near to Lyme Regis. And we're going to be talking about features like this all around the coasts of Britain. And first, before we do that, we're going to play a little game called Coast Detective. Okay, so I'm going to start by showing you a couple of photographs. And these are photographs of the same place. Now, I want you to just call out what you think has happened. Okay, I expect you got that right. And we did look at a picture a little bit like this last week of a place in Canada. So you will have guessed, I think, that what's happened is the tide has gone out. So here, for example, this is a little clue because this is the exact same boat here that's moored up in the same place, but the water has come in when the tide came in. And it's the same for these other things here. And this is the same land in the background, but the thing is, it's also been taken on a different day when the weather wasn't quite so nice. And so you can't see the mountains over here, okay, because this is a place in Scotland, and if it's a nice day, you can see all the way through to there. But on the day that this one was taken, you can't see that. So some of the pictures I'm going to show you, okay, they're all of different places, and I've got one, there's a pair of pictures for each place, and you're going to try and match them all up, okay? And they are of the same place, but sometimes they've been taken on a different day, so it's the main difference is the tide is out, but there may be some other differences as well. So here we go, here are the pictures. Now these pictures are A, B, C, D, E, F, G and H, and when I finish speaking you're going to pause the video for a bit and work out where they go. So you don't need to send me anything for this one, it's just a bit of fun, but on a scrap of paper write down the letters that you think go together. For example, if you think that A is the same as B, okay, it isn't, but if you thought it was, then you would write down A alongside B on your scrap of paper. Okay, so then what we're going to do is I'm going to carry on, but you're going to pause the video and see if you can work them all out. Okay, right, so you've paused the video, you've worked them all out, and I'm expecting that you've got a sheet of paper now with 4 pairs of letters that you will have worked out which ones go together. Okay, if you haven't done that yet, you need to do that because I'm about to go to the next slide. Okay, here we go. Now, I expect you got this one because this is very noticeable, isn't it? These cliffs are sticking out here and they're sticking out there. And if you look closely, there's these railings here and there are some steps for when you can go down to the water there by these steps. And here they are. Of course, this is a bit of a sunnier day, but it's exactly the same place. Okay, and the big difference is the tide has come right in here into this here, and you can see some erosion, which we're going to talk about in a minute. You can see some erosion has taken place there. So tide out on this one, F, tide in, B, they're the same place. Okay, and on these, when I've matched them up here for you, I've put the tide out on the left every time. So this is the tide out, okay, and this is the tide in. Right, next one. Now I think this one was quite hard. So G is the tide out, and all these boats here, they're all moored up here on the beach. But when the tide comes in, okay, it's also some of the boats are different as well, but I think that one is the same. That one is going to be the same as this one, and this little light blue one is the same as that one. Okay, and you might have noticed these buildings here, and that is also familiar. Okay, so that was quite a hard one. G matches up with E. Okay, then A, this one's in Scotland, and here is a ruined cottage. Okay, it's the same, it's a little bit closer here. Here's a ruined cottage that you often find these in Scotland. People used to live there, and a lot of them left in the 19th century and went to live in places like America and Canada. And down here on the beach, here the tide's in, okay, and here the tide is out. Yeah, so you can see that one. And here, this the clue here is these other islands in the background. they're quite clear and they look the same shape. Okay, so A matches with H, and finally D tides out, C tides in, they're the same place as well. And here is this sort of, there's some woods and buildings here on the far side, and here they are again, same ones. Okay, but as you can see, when the tide does go out, lots of birds come in, lots of wading birds come in and feed off the creatures that live there. Okay, so the tide, that's the common thing, and the tide makes a massive difference all the way along the coast. And so we're just briefly going to touch on why we have tides in the first place. So we're not going to go into loads of detail here today, but the tides are caused when the moon is traveling around the earth, and when its gravitational pull is not as strong as the sun, but on the other hand it is closer than the sun. And so when the moon, for example, is on the exact opposite side of the earth from the sun, then you get a high tide caused by the gravity of the moon. Okay, and the low tide is actually the opposite. Low tide is here, low tide is there, and you also get a high tide on the opposite side of the earth at the same time. And so everywhere in the world that has tides will have 2 high tides every day and 2 low tides every day. So if you're going down to your favorite beach and it's only got sand to play on at low tide, then you want to get the tide tables and work out when the tide is going to be low. Okay, now we're moving on to natural coastal features, and these are the key words that I want you to learn today. So we're going to go through, and by the end of this lesson you'll know what all of these mean. Okay, and so we're going to have, this is an unusual word, a berm. Okay, so we're going to talk about that in a minute. We're going to learn what a wave cut platform is. Sand dunes. Now you quite likely you already know what they are, and you may have been playing in them sometimes when you've been to the beach. Marram grass. What's a sea stack? What does erosion mean? You might know that already. What's a rock pool? A landslip, I'm going to talk about that. And an arch, we've already seen one in the very first picture. And finally, we're going to talk about a type of rock called granite. Right, so here we go. So on this picture then, which is down in Devon, I want you to see if you can say some ideas for what are we looking at, where the arrows are. I'll give you a few seconds to think about that. Okay, so what are we looking at? Before I forget, we need to just mention these. I'm sure you noticed these. We did these in the last lesson. These are the groins that stop the beach from gradually getting washed away altogether. So they're man-made. So we're not talking about them this week because they're not a natural coastal feature. People have put them in. Okay, and here's some development. We talked about that last week. But the things I'm interested in this week, what's happened here? It seems very clean, this cliff face, and very, very steep. Okay, now it's actually very clean compared to this face here. This is so what's happened now? This is a phrase I want you to learn. This is a landslip. So the land has quite recently, some of it has fallen off and have created this big sheer drop, nice and clean. This of course happens near to us as well, down on the southeast coast. And when that's happened, when it's chalky, so this rock is quite red, but when it happens in a chalky landscape, like the famous White Cliffs of Dover, when there's a landslip, you get this very clean rock showing. So that's a landslip. Of course, it's a bit of a problem if you are the person who owns a house right there, because what it probably means is that this is gradually going to keep happening, and eventually you'll have to move out. Okay, so there's a landslip. Now this we've seen before. So this is a cliff that's left behind. But this one hasn't slipped recently because you've got lots and lots of different things growing on here now. So that's why it's a different colour to this one. This one's happened more recently. So landslips that are linked to cliffs. Now this one here, what's happening is the pebbles on the beach are getting left behind in a ridge. You'll notice that the shape of the ridge follows the shape of the shoreline down here, and in winter when the storms are at their strongest, these pebbles get forced up the beach to form a ridge like this, and we get this a lot on the southwest coast, and the proper name for this is a berm. Okay, so that's a new word. I doubt if you've heard that one before. So that you may see that in one or two of the other pictures, and you might see it this summer if you do get a chance to go to the beach. Now, I think you'll get this one quite easily. What do you think this is? So this is a nice sandy beach, isn't it? It looks great. And over time, the wind is blowing the sand up here onto the back here. And then you get these little hills that are formed, and they're great for playing in. And they're called, sorry, I did put the headland in first. I'll tell you what that is in a minute. But this one, these are called sand dunes. Okay, now certain types of flora, as in different flowers and grasses grow on sand dunes, and this one is called marram grass. Okay, so that's the type. It's quite wispy. Now, let's talk about what a headland is. A headland is this thin strip of land that's sticking out into the sea. So if you often that creates a nice sheltered beach. So a type of beach where you might go on holiday might have a headland that you can see. Often it's quite steep, quite rocky, and you get quite strong waves breaking on the headland. And that creates a nice bit of shelter here. So they often end up being the sort of beaches that you would go to on holiday. So here's another amazing looking beach with a really big headland here. Okay, it's also got sand dunes at the back of the beach like we saw on the previous one, and here's the marram grass a bit closer up, and you can see what a massive beach it is by these people. Okay, that gives you a sense of the scale of this beach. Now, some beaches haven't got lots of sand. The shoreline is very, very rocky. It's usually because the type of rock is very tough. This is quite a tough type of rock called slate, and so this doesn't erode away to form sand quite so easily as some of the other ones that we've seen. And here, as you can see, there's a lighthouse. And the reason why there's going to be a lighthouse there is because we've got a rocky shoreline. As the tide comes in, a lot of these rocks won't be able to be seen. And in the old days, lots of ships would have hit them by accident, and people would have died, and the ship would have been sunk. So then people started to build lighthouses. And as you know, they flash even at night, so that if you're out there on your boat, you're not in danger of hitting these rocks that you might not see when the tide comes in. Right, on this picture, what do you think we're looking at? Obviously, these people are having fun on the beach, but these features that I've got arrows pointing towards, what do you think they are? Now, this is called a wave cut. So this is an effect of the waves over many years, and you can see some of these rocks are sticking out more because the waves have cut in underneath. Okay, and here's a massive slab of rock. Okay, and this cliff's been eroded over a long time, and the erosion has led to the cliffs above. They no longer have anything to support them, and so slabs of quite tough rock fall off. Of course, you don't want to be there when that happens. But there it is. It's been lying there probably quite a long time, probably years and years there. And so these are big rock slabs. And then finally, over hundreds of years, further erosion turns these rocks into sand. So this is quite a red type of rock called sandstone. And as it erodes, it makes sand that's quite reddy in colour, like this sand here. And how does this work? So here's a diagram to show you. Here's a cliff. The sea comes to there. Gradually, the waves crashing over years and years cause this notch to form. And then the cliff's got nothing to support it, so it gets weaker. Then you get your landslip that we talked about earlier, and it all falls off. And lots of big rocks fall down, and some of them get deposited. That's what this word is, deposition. Some of them get deposited in the sea. There they are. But you're left with this flat area of rock underneath, which we call a wave cut platform. And we're going to see a picture now of a really perfect wave cut platform. Here we go. So this is a wave cut platform. Here's some of the cliff that's fallen down and has been deposited as pebbles and gradually got worn to be smaller and smaller. And so this is a really good example. That's one of the phrases I want you to learn, wave cut platform. And of course, at low tide, when the tide goes out, it's a great place to come and play, and all these people are having a look in these pools, see if they can see any shells or crabs or anything like that. So as we mentioned before, some rocks are a bit tougher and harder to erode. Okay, this is a type of rock called granite, very, very tough. But the sea, which is stronger than any rock, can get into the little gaps, the joints in between the rocks. So you see these joints here and here. The little gaps is where the sea gets in, and gradually it can erode even the toughest rocks, like granite. And after it's eroded in these joints for years and years and years, you can get formed a special feature like this, was very unusual, called an arch. Okay, and then later, over a long period of time, this probably used to be an arch coming over here, but the sea's eroded the rest of it, and when there's nothing left to support it, it'll fall down into the sea and get eroded even more, and end up being pebbles or sand on the beach. But you're left with this. Okay, and this has got a special name as well. It's called a sea stack. Rocks in here, it's the same idea, it's an arch, but the rocks in here are vertical, whereas the other one was horizontal. And at some point in the future, this will collapse, and then this will be a sea stack on its own as well. And this is quite big. You can see, you can get an idea of how big it is because these are little birds here down there. So you might have seen one of them when you've been to the beach, or you might see one next time you go. And when you go, you'll be able to say to your family, I know how that's formed. You can tell them all about it. Now, I expect you know what this is. The tide has come in, and there's lots of water in here, but then when the tide goes out again, this water will still be there. And this is what we call a rock pool. When you go to the beach, this is a great place to go and find out what you can see. So there's often lots and lots of interesting things in rock pools. You can find crabs in there, different creatures, sometimes little fish, lots of seaweed, as you can see, and barnacles and shells. Fun to explore, and usually the water gets a bit warmer in there in a rock pool than it is in the actual sea, so it can be fun to play in there even if the weather's not brilliant. Good for a British summer. So those are some of the things. Now there's one more. In this rock pool, these little stones, these pebbles, have become almost round, and that is because the waves have come in and rolled them around, and they've bashed off each other over many years, and so they end up becoming rounded. So you'll often see that sort of thing, and this is the effect of the waves as the tide comes in and comes out again. Rounded pebbles. Right, so we looked at lots of different types of beach, and we've been talking about lots of keywords. So your task for this week is to see if you can write down these words. Okay, I've chosen 10 of the words and phrases that we've learned this week. These are all natural coastal features. Okay, berm, wave cut platform, sand dunes, marram grass, sea stack, erosion, rock pool, landslip, arch, granite. Now I've put the definitions here for you, but I've mixed them up. So I want you to put them in the right order and write them down, and then you can send me a photograph of what you've done. Okay, I reckon you'll get them all right. But of course, if you're confused, you could rewind the video and go back to the bit where that keyword is mentioned. Here are the definitions. So which one goes with which? You've got to match them up, write them on a piece of paper, and send me a photograph. Okay, well done. And I hope you get the chance during the summer, with a bit of luck, to go down to one of our local bits of coastline and maybe try out some of these words on your family. Okay, all the best and have a lovely summer. Bye for now.